At 12 a.m., we hear 3 or 4 shots ring out. Those shots immediately strike 2 officers that are standing next to each other. This is really an ambush is what it is. I mean, you can't see it coming, you don't understand that it's going to happen, and you're basically defenseless from the fact that it is happening to you at the time. And that is something that is very difficult to guard against when you have a group of officers standing in a large group, and then you have gunfire, certainly gunfire directed at them.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, and as we speak to Bernard Kerik, former commissioner of NYPD, the assailant is still at large. They have found shell casings they believe that could have been associated with the shooting. Bernie, what does this shooting say to you? I mean, the media has gone to great lengths to separate the shooter from the protesters. Yet, if they showed on the ground, scrawled on the ground where the protests were taking place outside police headquarters, dead pigs. So, I mean, give me your take on all this.
Well, listen, nobody has any objections to peaceful protests. We see them occur in Ferguson and around the country. But Ferguson and New York City and multiple other cities around the country have also seen so-called peaceful protests that were extremely aggressive toward the public and toward the police. And I think this is another demonstration of, one of those protests where you have people in the crowd that are dead set against attacking the police, attacking the general public. Those rounds, those shots were fired, they estimate, between 100 and 125 yards away. That's more than a football field. They could have hit one, but they hit the police. And luckily, by 2 inches or so, in both of those cases, those cops could have been dead. So this is a terrible, horrific, heinous crime. I'm confident that the Missouri police will hold those accountable, will catch those responsible. But this is something the law enforcement community has to deal with, not only in Ferguson, all around this country. And we've seen an increase in these sort of attacks since Ferguson, since Staten Island, since the civil rights leaders, so-called leaders in this country, have urged these protests around the nation.
Right. I was going to say, who's responsible for this kind of climate, do you believe? Or how much culpability for creating the climate, not for the shooting itself, but for creating the climate, do you believe Eric Holder and or Barack Obama have?
Well, you know what? I think there's a number of people responsible for the climate. In my opinion, the civil rights leader, Al Sharpton, is one that instigated, that incited. And what's annoying to me right now, Steve, since January 1st of this year, 3 law enforcement officers in this country have been killed, shot and killed. Every one of them have been black. One of them was a United States Marshal who works for the Department of Justice. I haven't heard Al Sharpton or any of these other so-called civil rights leaders or any of these other leaders that's been pushing for these protests. I haven't heard them calling for justice. I haven't heard them calling for, protests concerning these attacks on cops, murders of U.S. law enforcement officials. And to people that works in the field, that has to deal with the dangers of law enforcement, I think that's pretty annoying.
And where do we go from here, Bernie, tonight, for instance? Do the cops have to beef up? Do we see a repeat of the kind of gear they used during the riots?
Well, the chief said today this is going to be a delicate balance now moving forward, given that these kinds of assaults or this kind of attack has to be anticipated. I'm sure you're going to see a different response. I'm sure you're going to see a different amount of preparation. Peaceful protesters will be dealt with in one manner, but the police have to protect themselves. They also have to protect those protesters.
Absolutely.
In the community.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately for us, in many of these scenarios, the peaceful protesters, you know, they're incited by others that come from outside the community.
Bernie, great to talk to you, sir. Thank you very much. Bernard Kerik, ladies and gentlemen. Doug Feith is next. Talk a little bit about Iran. Don't go away.